What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, Boogie2988, coming at you live once again to the power of the internet. And you may remember, my good friends, this is Jacob, this is Ellis from the Twitch channel, Big_Breakfast. You'll find them in the description box below. We're going to check them out on Twitch. I think you'll love what they do. We all went and saw Deadpool 2.
We sure did.
We did.
Now, if you saw the previous review I did with these guys, we reviewed Ready Player One, which I came out of that movie pretty happy, and you came out pretty not happy.
Angry.
We were not pleased.
And this time, I came out with kind of like it was good, but not great, and you came out pretty...
I really liked this movie. So I liked it quite a bit.
So the way I do these spoilers, I always like to do a spoiler-free section so that everybody can watch it, even if you haven't seen the movie. You can come back and watch the second half once you're ready for spoilers. So we'll go spoiler-free. My honest opinion, I thought this was not as good as the first Deadpool. I see some of the arguments that people have made why this is better than the previous Deadpool, but in this movie, I don't know, I always like origin stories, right? So I think that's a big part of it. I feel like the first one really relied mostly on Deadpool and introduced the comedy. I think they rehashed a lot of the comedy, like the shticks, the second time through, and so that was kind of frustrating for me, like, oh, I've seen this. I felt that way a couple of times, but really, it was still really good. Like, if Deadpool was an 8, and I would probably have given the first Deadpool an 8, I would still give this a 7.5. It's just slightly not as good to me. But where would you rate
the first Deadpool? I would have given a 7, and this one I would have given an 8.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
I feel like
I liked this one more.
The callbacks to the first movie were pretty well placed and not overdone, and the newer jokes were very funny. And I don't particularly like origin stories too much. So this one being already in a set-up universe where they could introduce interesting side characters was a lot more entertaining for me.
They didn't have to spend as much time setting up who is Deadpool, for those of you that don't know. And I liked that a lot.
When I go back, and I was trying to think of what it was I liked in the first movie better than the second. I think he broke the fourth wall, obviously, quite a bit in both movies. No spoiler there. In the first movie, it was new and innovative to do it, and he did it in new and innovative ways. Like the line that comes to mind is, breaking the fourth wall. I've broken the fourth wall twice, and now I've broken all 8 walls, or something like that. Like shticks like that, or the storytelling mechanics, or all of that stuff. But I mean, overall, the movie's well made. I think probably the best part about it is the soundtrack. This might be a better soundtrack for a movie than Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or 2. Like, this is one of the best soundtracks, period. And what was your comment you had about the soundtracks? You said that you thought...
Oh, for Ready Player One?
Or no, for Deadpool. You said you always like to imagine that the soundtrack is playing in Deadpool's head.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a soundtrack that an editor put on the movie. It's the song Deadpool is thinking of at whatever's happening in the movie.
Right, and the music was spot on this time. I love it when they do...
That fits very well.
they do like a multiple layer kind of thing, and in this case, the multiple layer is the music is almost always a joke, or always fits the scene so perfectly. And we'll save the probably the best one of that. You pointed that out.
One of my favorite jokes in the movie.
Mm-hmm. I felt like the CGI this time around was real hit and miss.
I can agree with that.
Like one of the big fight scenes at the end between 2 CGI characters, I was like, "Ooh, that doesn't look great."
Some of it
and then, of course, no spoilers here, but Colossus is in the movie again, and in points, Colossus just looks like a bad drawing. I couldn't.
He doesn't look great.
Right?
I don't remember him looking like much better in the first one.
Right, exactly. And so that was my biggest complaint, I think, for the first movie, is that Colossus just looked weird and out of place. And I get that. With this, in the first movie and the second movie, they went with some very, very obscure Marvel characters, Colossus being one of the more obscure X-Men. I mean, I guess he's quite at the forefront in the comics, but you never heard about him in the Marvel universe, and you're really not going to, because he's such a weird Russian giant metal golem. I mean, I don't, and like from the first movie, there's Nagasaki Warhead. Well, I can never remember the character's name.
Negasonic something.
Sonic Warhead, that's her name.
Negasonic
and
Warhead.
That's an actual character. That's an actual X-Man from a fringe comic. Yeah. So she exists in the universe, and that's what they did with, and so they did that with this movie as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more in spoilers. But yeah, CGI, did it bother you at all?
It wasn't great, but it wasn't great in the first one either.
Right.
And whenever CGI stuff is hitting CGI stuff, it's not going to look good.
It's not distractingly bad to me.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, what is this? What is going on? How, like, if you kind of go back and watch older movies when you remember them a certain way,
Right.
and then you see that CGI now, like even the original Lord of the Rings, as much as I love those films,
Right.
and it looks like hot garbage, some of that stuff.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
it wasn't that bad in
It didn't ruin the movie.
Yeah.
by
Right,
any
right,
means.
right. Just a couple of times, and almost to a point that I wish that was a joke that Deadpool had made at some point. You know, because they did a little bit like in the intro of the first movie, they're like, and starring the CGI character played by so and so, right? And so I wish that maybe they'll reference that in the third movie. Who knows? But but overall, I mean, and then story wise, without getting into spoilers, so the first movie is obviously the origin story. I think with this one, they really had to do something new and unique with it, right? You got to go and tell them the story. And so if you've seen the trailer, you know that the primary story is the forming of the X-Force team. But they, of course, and you can tell by his little smile there, they really subvert expectations. And I avoided the trailers altogether. I saw like the little jokey trailers, like the Bob Ross thing and the phone booth thing.
Right, yeah.
Right, but when they're like, even in the theater now, I've gotten to where if I know I'm going to watch a movie, if I'm not going to react to the trailer live on YouTube or something, or like on stream, I would just hide my eyes until the movie comes out. So I did. I was just like, I'm done. I like
bring a little sleep mask in.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'll put my phone on the lowest brightness and just like whatever until the trailer's over. So, but did the trailer kind of mislead at all here, or
I don't think so. No.
Right.
I mean, I feel like the first movie set a certain expectation,
Right.
and this movie then met that expectation. And all they had to do for the trailer was make a bare minimum. Here's kind of what's happening in the movie, and then let's make a bunch of weird joke trailers outside of that, because we don't need to tell people
which
that
is
they
how to
like Deadpool.
Right, which is how to market Deadpool, honestly. And honestly, I wish there was more of that just happening for franchise movies. Like if you know what you're walking into, right? There's some stuff now that when I accidentally watched the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War trailer, I'm like, I don't want to see.
I thought you meant the whole movie.
I don't want to see this. I don't want to see any of this from the movie, right?
Sure.
And so I'm finally at a point where I loved like the joke trailers or the alternate trailers, or even like with Rogue One, where there were scenes that got cut out of the final movie, or Guardians of the Galaxy, perfect example. They filmed stuff that was not meant for the movie, like when they're introducing the characters in the trailer. More of that. Just I wish that could be a thing, because trailers really got to a point where they're spoiling the entire movie. You do that with Deadpool, you got a dead movie, right? If they advertise this like a normal comedy, where it's just like all the highlights and all the jumps and all these are the 10 funny jokes.
Yeah.
Ooh, right? Like they would just ruin this movie. But so
Plot and story arc are not what I'm looking for in my Deadpool movie. Though.
Right.
So I don't
Well,
mind
story-wise,
that so much.
But story-wise, this was
It was better than I expected.
Right.
It was much better than I
and it was
expected.
really different than I expected. So I think we should probably get into spoilers. One last thing I'll say before we get into the storyline of the spoilers. This is, once again, a hard R. It's not as perverted as last time, but the violence is... Woo! I mean, I was really impressed with the violence this time around. Little disappointed, not as sexy as I would have necessarily wanted, but that kind of makes sense, all things
Deadpool
considered.
was pretty sexy.
Right. I mean, there's full frontal in this movie, just so you know. So this is not a good one for the kids. But then again, I saw Predator and RoboCop and all those movies when I was really young, and it didn't ruin me. I turned out great, kids. So I don't know. Just use your own discretion as a parent, but keep in mind if you're walking this movie, it's definitely an R-rated movie. So spoilers. So spoilers. Say spoilers, so they know if you're
Spoilers.
casually
Spoilers.
watching right
This
now.
is
Full
spoilers.
into spoilers.
We're spoiling things. Like milk.
So obviously they wanted to change the tone a little bit. The first movie is all up, right? It has drama, but it's always up, and it's always a joke, and it's always laughing. And what really knocked this down a point for me might be the thing that builds it up for you guys, is they get very serious at the beginning of the movie.
It does get kind of dark.
Right, and it gets so dark at the beginning of the movie with the death of the girlfriend, and then him committing suicide or attempting suicide, obviously. And then they try to go into the credits, which failed in two different ways. Number one, I'm in that down point now, and you guys are making jokes, and they kind of bled into it a little bit. You pointed it out after the movie that like the credits this time, instead of describing the people that made the movies, is like Deadpool saying screenplay by why would they do this, the real monsters, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then Deadpool's still trying to do funny shit. So not only have we seen that intro before, and this is just the same thing a second time,
Pretty much.
right
yeah.
now it doesn't set well because of this huge downer moment. So I really felt like the first act of this movie, I don't know, it wasn't as funny, it didn't feel as good, it wasn't exciting. I was just kind of like, wow, this is an actual story, which, like you said, is not really what I want from a Deadpool movie. I just want to go in there and laugh my ass off. Like, I don't want Deadpool to be invested in the storyline at all. I want him to be above the storyline, just the same with a handful of comics, right?
That's a big part of his character.
Right. And so I get that he's always been also torn between the reason he's carefree is because he's fucking crazy. And so he is a guy dying of cancer in a miserable state in the comics as well. So obviously telling that story is cool here, but I don't know, like that first act when he's a real downer, he goes to the ice box, you know.
I feel like it's possible that they had a hard time finding the jokes to make the tone right.
Right.
And they didn't want to try to force the humor and then have it not work. It
Right.
probably would have been worse if that were the case.
Right.
Whereas this, where it's a little lighter on the jokes and they spend a little more time with a lower tone, they can ramp it up towards
Right.
the end. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it because
Right.
I do think they accomplished that, though.
But did that succeed
Yes,
for you? Like
because-
that was a success for
Absolutely,
you?
yeah.
I didn't have a problem with
Right.
it.
There's still some really great scenes in it, like when he's chasing down the killer. Like I felt that chase, like that was one of the best chases in a Marvel scene, or Marvel movie to date. And when he's chasing that guy down in the streets, and he gets away temporarily, and I'm just like, oh shit, is this what this movie is going to be? And then he knocks him out of the car using the full force of his body, then pulls in front of a bus. I was like, ooh, I felt all of that, right?
Yeah.
But after that first act, what did you think of the kid? I was glad to see a fat kid in the Marvel universe, but I will tell you, it's
They even
frustrating.
made a reference to it.
Right.
Right?
What was the reference?
He said, see, the industry discriminates.
Right, yeah. There are no fat superheroes, and that's true. There are plenty of fat characters like the Blob. The Juggernaut is not fat, but he's massive. But all the large characters in the Marvel universe, with the exception of Hulk, my favorite hero, they're always cast aside. They're always outcasts.
There definitely aren't any very overweight people.
Right.
All the big people are big muscles.
Right. And
Except for some of the
and
bad
you can
guys
you can
that
be
I know of.
you can be a hero and you can be muscular. You can be a hero and be indestructible. But if you're fat, you're the Blob, right? And
Yeah.
You're a bad
which is
guy.
like one of the
And you're a bad guy,
Still
yeah.
one of my favorite characters in the Marvel universe. So, I was glad to be represented in any way. So to this fat kid, I will tell you, it bothers me that when they flash forward to Cable's future, and they show the kid murdering his family, the kid had lost the weight by then. But
It's hard to tell, but I did notice that as well.
right. But you were saying like
I chalked that up to because Cable makes a comment about like, oh, you fuckers ruined the planet.
Right.
So maybe the food is scarce.
Right, but
And
then at the same time-
everyone is skinny. I mean, like, I'm not saying that that's the reason.
I was going to say,
whatever.
that's the
I'm
kind of
just-
thing that you came up with. There's no way that the writers thought
Oh
that
no,
before.
they just
Right,
hired
right,
a guy
right.
to be that guy in the
Right.
future.
And I again, I mean, some of us shed the weight, some of us don't. So, but to not make this movie about me, let's talk about Josh Brolin as Cable. Now, and a lot of people were upset at that casting.
Really?
Right? They were like, well,
didn't know that.
They did
and
a
they
phenomenal
also knew
job.
he was going to be in the third Avengers movie as Thanos, which they reference in the movie. It was
It
one of my
calls him
favorite
Thanos.
jokes.
Calls him Thanos.
Because I had not even connected that was this guy who played Thanos until he said it.
Okay,
And
really?
then that
That's
realized,
really
oh
funny.
shit, that is
That
Josh
is the guy,
Brolin, right?
yeah.
That's the guy. Because he looks like Thanos in the movies, right? He still has the face, but
Sure,
it looks
yeah.
like Thanos to me. It's well enough. CJ,
He's hidden.
and that
pretty
really,
well in
like,
the
if you
best
look at
actors.
Thanos and compare it to Juggernaut, or Thanos and compare it to a lot of the CGI in this movie, and the worst part about it is, like, when Deadpool's getting ripped in half or somebody loses a limb, that's still CGI. That stuff all looks good. Colossus and Juggernaut just don't look good, and their fight is just like, wow.
Juggernaut looked better.
Right. I think it was I forget, it was Critical who said it would almost be better if it had just been a Deadpool cartoon drawing of the fight at that point. And I was like, God, that would have been kind of funny if they
That
just
would've been
animated
funny,
yeah.
do that for the third movie, save some money on CGI.
Just have Deadpool draw some comics.
in crayon.
But yeah, the villains in this movie, Cable being a villain, were really good.
I
was-
loved the villains. I liked
yeah.
both of them. Cable had like a real motivation, way better than most
Right.
Marvel movies have in,
Right.
in terms of villains. And then the Juggernaut, we are in spoiler territory, right?
Right, absolutely.
His decision to just sort of follow the kid that let him out and go along with his plan of, I want to kill these guys that tortured me as a kid. The Juggernaut's just like, well, yeah, I like punching stuff.
Yeah, whatever.
Sure.
I
that sounds great.
I got
Yeah.
nothing to do. I've been in jail for a bunch of time, right?
yeah,
His
why would I-
motivation
yeah.
made sense to me, and
Yeah.
I loved it.
Like, you saved me, so I owe you one kid.
Yeah, I'll
Let's
do
go
that.
murder some child molesters or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean straight up child molesters. That's what I love about the hard R. I love the hard R because you can get away with these guys are actual child molesters. They were beating and physically molesting us, and they were terrible fucking pieces of shit. Now that is apparently somebody said that one of my friends said that was related to in the comics. The orphanage that he's in is actually in the Marvel universe.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah, because Domino is actually from it.
Right. And so let's talk about Domino for a minute. Okay, that number one, she's played by an actress that's in Atlanta. I don't know if you guys have seen Atlanta
Yes.
yet, but Atlanta's phenomenal. Her character there is phenomenal. As soon as I saw her on screen, I'm like, oh, I just saw her on Atlanta. This is great. I thought when they were putting together the team, this is going to be the worst character, right?
No.
But what a good casting for, number
was
one, who
brilliant.
to cast, but like for the X-Force, because the comedic potential of Luck Powers is through the roof, right? And so when they of course reference that naysaying, and Deadpool's like, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I bet it's not cinematic at all.
Yeah.
And then it's
Cars
the
flying
best
over
scene
her.
in the whole movie. Like that's I think the true joy of this movie. The action of the first one was good. The action in this movie is through the roof. Like it's incredible. And again, the CGI and all the action sequences look amazing. And in the first story, I liked how again we're getting away from the Avengers have to save the world. Thor has to save the world. We have to save Asgard. We have to save the Earth. We have to save. He just wanted to save the girl in the first movie. In this one, he just wants to save some young boy.
Yeah.
I love that Deadpool is kind of a minor character. But not that minor. But I guess that is the difference between the Sony Marvel universe and the classic Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because most of the movies, if you look at the Sony, and this one is by Sony, right? It's the same people who did Logan and everything else, if I'm not mistaken. Please let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong. But it really feels like it's almost always very interpersonal. The X-Men universe, separate from the cinematic Marvel universe, it's always very personal. All the X-Men movies, everything up till now.
I think that's just comes from the nature of the characters that they focus on.
Right.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe focuses on a lot of characters that, like, well, it doesn't make sense for Doctor Strange really to be fucking around on the lower level of
Right,
crime.
exactly, yeah.
He's just like, he's beyond that, especially when there are heroes like Deadpool who will handle stuff like that.
Not to mention,
Deadpool's a bad example.
Who's going to trust Deadpool to save the world, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah,
at that
they go
point,
through
yeah.
that,
I mean, he's never going to be on a team that he doesn't assemble. This version of Deadpool.
Yeah.
So, and again, his power set's kind of uniquely defined. Like, I love the fact that it's loose. He can pretty much do whatever he needs to do, whatever's funny at the time. They do that in the comics, depending on who's writing them. And that, I think and that's probably one of my favorite things is all the nods to the comics here, much of which went right over my head. Probably the joke I brought up with you. I don't know if you got it, but it was your power is luck. Who wrote that? Probably somebody who can't draw feet.
Yes.
And so, did you know that reference?
Yeah. The writer who originally wrote that character for Domino, right? Was who he was talking about couldn't draw feet. And that was
Right,
like
and
a
so
joke.
like as my roommate was saying, like he's a comic collector. He's like, I despise that that artist because he will try to come up with reasons to hide their feet so he doesn't have to draw them, and that's like an in joke if you're a comic book fan. And so so many wonderful in jokes. Did any come to mind for you? Come to mind for you?
My favorite joke in the movie by far was whenever Wade was finally ready to go meet Ness, and he was going to cross that wall, and the song in my head that he is thinking about is "Take on Me" because that's just what the music
It
video
looks
is.
exactly like that music video,
And
right? Yeah.
that was a very well crafted, funny joke.
Yeah.
And they don't lean into it too hard. It's very subtle. They're playing it lightly in the background. It's a cover of the song. You don't necessarily immediately recognize it.
And
that was great.
And that's something this movie got better, I think, than the first one, because the first one was a lot of dated references and stuff like that, which is Deadpool. I mean, that's Deadpool. The limited amount of comics that I have read. But that, Deadpool will make outdated memes. He will make outdated jokes and so on and so forth. This one had a lot more just like subtle humor. It felt more like a Parks and Rec episode than an Office episode, right? It felt like kind of a more subtle kind of, or maybe more like an Arrested. It felt more like an Arrested Development writer wrote this one as opposed to an Office writer writing the first one. Because the others, first movie is a lot of over the head, hit you in the face comics, and this is more.
I
jokes.
expected more of that, and I think that's one of the reasons I like the movie so much.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't that.
And I also feel like there's going to be a lot of stuff for like rewatch value as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to second. Is any little in jokes or favorite joke of the?
Yeah, definitely. My favorite joke was right in the beginning when he has the action figure of Logan impaled on the tree, which if you've seen Logan, it's exactly that scene. And he pushes the little stake down his chest and he turns like a ballerina. That was brilliant.
I was like, I would buy that in a heartbeat.
Somebody had to make that. That's not a toy you
if
can
that
buy.
exists, I would purchase
There's a
that
prop maker
immediately.
who built that, and I cannot give that guy enough accolades.
And there is also since there's so much fourth wall breaking, I've heard the fan theories that these are not the events as they happened. They are the events as Deadpool would tell as things happened. So a lot of the weird stuff that happens, or like the really like over the top stuff, could take place if that's the case. And that's why like the first movie, like the physics don't make sense at the end of the first movie at all.
But Deadpool doesn't make sense. I mean, it's a superhero.
Right? Yeah, there's nothing about this that
Yeah.
makes sense, and
Yeah.
that's the best part. So we talked about subverting expectations in the non-spoiler report. The part I'm talking about there is they assemble the X-Force, including my favorite joke in the movie. Probably now that I think about it, my favorite joke in the movie. Who's the invisible guy?
It's Brad Pitt.
The Vanisher.
Right, the Vanisher. And when he gets electrocuted for half a second,
like
Brad
one
Pitt
frame.
is on the screen, and that is Brad Pitt.
It
It's
is
actually
Brad Pitt,
Brad Pitt. And then there's another
That was
cameo.
fucking great.
The redneck when Cable comes back to Deadpool's
Yeah.
time.
Oh, yeah,
the
that's
redneck is
right.
Matt Damon in like heavy
and,
makeup.
and the
Oh.
other one is Alan Tudyk.
I knew
shit.
Alan Tudyk.
Right.
I thought that's what you were going to say. I
No.
didn't know the other one was
And then,
Matt Damon. That's fantastic.
Then there's one other like minor cameo. Juggernaut is billed as being played by himself, which is super funny for a CGI character. But the voice of him was actually Ryan Reynolds. They just modulated his voice to play him.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Right, and so I right now I will say, because Deadpool is a meme universe and he does outdated references. There was one joke where he hates this that I talked about this, but there's one reference that I was hoping would make this movie. As soon as I discovered, I knew like when they mentioned there was a big monster down in the basement. I'm like, that's Juggernaut. It's going to be Juggernaut. It has to be Juggernaut. Could be the Blob, but it's probably Juggernaut. It's going to be Juggernaut. And if it's Juggernaut, he has to say, someone's going to be like, well, who are you? And he's like, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. The old 10-year-old me. That was the only place it was ever going to happen. If it was ever going to happen, it could have happened in this movie.
Sure.
And your reasoning was that it shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
It's
it
not
did
funny.
happen as well. It happened in the X-Men movie.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, he says, "I'm the Juggernaut."
Did he?
bitch." Yeah, and
Okay.
and
Maybe
everybody
I forgot.
groaned, and it was horrible.
But this would be where it wouldn't make you groan. This is where it
I
would have
would've
worked.
it would still make me
I
groan.
would've
right?
grown.
Now, no, you compared it to Black Panther with "What Are Those?" which
Yeah.
is the worst part of Black Panther. Like, if you hate Black Panther for just that scene alone, I'm like, I got you. That's fair, right? So I guess from your perspective, but let me know in the comment section below if you think that reference would have fit or not. I truly felt it would have been. This is the one place you could get away with it.
I mean, if he had said it, I wouldn't have been like, oh, it doesn't make sense that he said that. I just don't think it's funny.
Right,
or
but-
It would have been out of place, but I
our-
agree.
But it's
I'm
like
not
so are the
into that.
Oprah jokes and shit from the. Was there an Oprah joke on the first one? But some of the outdated jokes.
I'd have to go back and rewatch
But
it.
I will say the second one really just got rid of the outdated references and they got rid of all the other stuff. And I hear it's because Ryan Reynolds had a much bigger hand in writing this one this time.
I believe that, yeah.
And then I think the best part about the movie, and really what had me leaving the theater very happy with my purchase price for the movie, is the end credits, the mid credit roll.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and obviously he goes and kills the original Deadpool, which is fucking fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He goes and kills Ryan Reynolds the
For
day he gets the
Cyclone
Green Lantern
Lantern,
sketch,
yeah.
which just puts everybody out of their misery at that
Yeah.
point. Thank God. And then there was one more. What was it?
I don't remember.
Oh, he goes back and saves the girl.
Yeah, he
right.
saves
So
the
this
girl.
movie just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
This movie is not canon. And that is the best part about it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now he can travel through time. Deadpool traveling through time is a terrifying thing. If that was the premise of the third movie, I would love it. Obviously, they won't do that. It was just a joke at the end.
I mean,
But-
if he just went back to various wars and fought people,
Right.
Yeah, that'd be
Right.
that'd probably be fine.
Right. And I think like it's all those little jokes. Like when again he went back to the mansion, no one's around. He's making fun of it. He mentions that the wheelchair smells like Patrick Stewart, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like it's that as a throwback to my favorite joke from the first movie, which is I'm taking you back to the mansion. Ooh, which Professor X is it? McAvoy or Stewart?
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so it was Stewart in this universe, I guess. But when he's like, well, nobody's around. Why is nobody ever around? They're all in one room,
Yeah.
hiding
And they
from
clip- they
Deadpool.
don't want to hang out with him.
That's why they're not around
Yeah.
Deadpool. They fucking hate you, right? Yeah. And and again, the plot is just fantastic when they make him an honorary X-Men and they which I guess happens in the comics point. They make him a trainee, right? And he just decides to kill the guy who molested the kid. And I'm like, nope, that's exactly what Deadpool would do.
Yeah.
Right, that's exactly right. This is and that's what I wanted him to do. And when he did it, there was no, I didn't flinch for a second. I'm like, kill that murdering piece of shit. Like, I couldn't have been happier. So overall, it's easiest. If the first movie was an 8, I think I gave it an 8. I might have given it a 9. I mean, I don't think the first movie was the end-all, be-all that a lot of people made it out to be, but I do think it was a resurgence for R-rated comics, and I do think it showed R-rated comedies, and I do think it showed that a Marvel movie can be anything at this point, right? Like, the comics were vastly varied, you know, and they can steer away from the tropes. They can make fun of the tropes. Deadpool's the perfect character to do it. And I love the fact that they're diversifying the formula with Ant-Man and Deadpool and stuff like that.
I liked Ant-Man.
Yeah, I love Ant-Man, right?
The,
and I'm looking forward to the second one, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, similar but very different.
That's
right?
true. I mean, Deadpool
right,
is less mature.
right. But I love that this continues to prove. Now I made a prediction in the first Deadpool review. I said that I was afraid we would see a bunch of copycat movies and clone movies. And now we're 3 years later. It's been 2 years since Deadpool 1. And this is the only movie that's really done this. We haven't seen a lot of hard R comedies. We haven't seen like trying to turn the formula on its head. And when they do that, I love it. Like Watchmen to me was the very first quintessential anti-hero movie, and I loved it. Then Deadpool does it. I really look forward to Deadpool 3, and I'm glad that it didn't cause this just nauseating wave of ripoffs trying to do that with other heroes. I guess you could probably say, you know, Ghostbusters tried to like make an irreverent version of Ghostbusters, but that
I guess
fell so
I can't really
flat.
speak to that.
But
I don't know. Deadpool 1 just like set such a precedent for rated R comic book movies,
right?
And then there were 2 branching paths, and those 2 branching paths were Deadpool 2 and Logan, and we both got very good versions. of those paths.
Both by I guess the same studio as well, and so like I'm really glad that they're the ones that are doing that. And Marvel's letting Marvel's. I mean, I don't know. Again, Infinity War definitely was not a movie for kids. I think you walk out of that movie going, "Mom, what happened to Spider-Man?" Like that. You have to teach your 8-year-old what death is today or whatever, right? You know. But at the end of the day, Deadpool recommended.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would too.
If you liked the first one, you definitely need to see it. If you're on the fence, you should probably watch the first one.
So the big question is this one you wait to watch at home? Is this one you wait to download or stream or get the Blu-ray, or is this one you need to see at the theater?
Download movies illegally.
I mean, illegally, right? But I mean, I download all my movies off the Xbox store, and I pay for them gladly.
Yeah, good.
I pay for movies, so you guys don't have to if you can't afford to, right? I'll make sure that they stay in business by buying the movies, and if you can't afford to, maybe you sneak into a theater. That's fine.
Of every movie.
Right. That way you guys can watch it for. Well, you got Movie Pass. You can't. You guys have Movie Pass.
I don't have Movie Pass.
Oh, you do.
I do have
sad about.
Right, so like you're not. It's like you're really. Paying
Even if I had
anyway.
paid to see Deadpool, I would have been. I absolutely recommend going to see this movie
in the theater.
I'm gonna go see it a second time
in the theater, or wait till it's at home. Is there enough stuff that makes
in the theater? Absolutely.
In the theater, because there's stuff that could get spoiled. Some jokes that could get spoiled. I agree, and I think the action makes it worth seeing on the big screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need to see it in IMAX or 3D. If that's
Deadpool 1, I don't think you needed to see in the theater.
Yeah, I agree. Actually.
Things were smaller in scope, and in Deadpool 2, I think it is a lot.
Oh,
better.
I do.
The scope is larger.
The last thing I want to talk about, again, we were talking about subverting expectations. They killed off a lot of minor characters, and there's got to be fans. And if you're one of these fans, I want to know, who are the characters they immediately killed off, like with the X-Force team, right?
Oh.
Like there's an alien called Star Cruncher or something.
Starfucker. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. Right,
I don't
but like,
remember any of their names.
right, apparently some people are a fan of that guy and were very disappointed that he's just their one chance because he's like in the X-Men universe, so he's owned by Sony. This is their one chance to get him, and he's dead like that.
Dead like that. I mean,
and then there's the one guy without powers, which I think was
and
he's the one he goes back to save.
Yep.
The one guy who is completely useless.
But he promises that he will.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
right.
Deadpool's like sort of weird, twisted sense
and that's
of honor.
That's very Deadpool. Everyone else can stay dead. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Do me a favor. Don't forget to check the link in the description box below. You want to go check out my friends. They stream 5 days a week. Let's see, Central Time, 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. or 9
p.m.
9 p.m.
You
6
Sunday
hours a day.
through Thursday.
And eventually they'll get their YouTube channel up, and I can link to that as well. Guys, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I'll speak with you again soon. Sammy, you were such a good boy. Thank you, buddy. Good boy.
Very good boy.
Yeah.